The FBI investigates many serious problems, from domestic intelligence to election interference, but Bigfoot? That too, apparently. Wednesday, the FBI released documents about a 1976 investigation into the mythical creature.
From mysterious footprints being encountered by civilians and photos of a large, hairy figure resembling the legendary creature from North American folklore being posted all over social media, to the U.S. government unlocking its Freedom of Information Act vault to reveal confidential files about Bigfoot, many people's perspective about the existence of the creature has been changed. But where does it all begin? Bigfoot gets famous. While almost everybody today, from young to old, knows of or has heard about Bigfoot, the creature was not as famous as it is now. Bigfoot became famous when the news media heard of a story about Ray Wallace, a road contractor working in Northern California, who, in his curiosity, made plaster casts of giant footprints that he found near his worksite in 1958. Following this, hundreds of similar alleged Bigfoot footprints, recorded clips, and a few handprints claimed to belong to the mythical creature have been reported. Although most people believe that these prints were made by Bigfoot, bears or other giant ape-like creatures are responsible for making some. On the other hand, some of these prints are fake, and many others remain unexplained. A few months after the California evidence, in October 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin decided to do their own exploration.
Something emerges from the brush, an enormous animal Patterson and Gimlin have never seen before. They think it might be Bigfoot. Patterson and Gimlin then hurry back to their campsite to grab some plaster. They know they're going to need as much proof as possible.
They targeted the woods in search of Bigfoot evidence near the place where Wallace claimed to have found his Bigfoot tracks. But that was not the only place the mythical creature was claimed to have been sighted. In Bluff Creek, they sighted a hairy creature strolling through a clearing, and they managed to film a short video from a reported distance of about 80 feet. The resulting clip is blurry and difficult to interpret, but clearly shows something unlike any animal known to inhabit the region. To some, this is clear proof that Bigfoot lives among humans, but to others, it is merely a man or a woman in a gorilla costume trying to fool people. But how can one tell the difference between something real and a hoax? The stories of the creature gain popularity day by day. With the creature's possibility of threatening the safety of the citizens, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation decided to look into it and enlighten the people. What they released is too harsh a truth for people to handle. The U.S. government releases evidence of Bigfoot. According to the newly released file on Bigfoot, which arrived at the FBI records vault on June 5, 2019, the agency was involved in at least one particular incident in Bigfoot history. With their state-of-the-art equipment and resources, the feds analyzed a biological sample that at one point was thought to belong to Bigfoot. But where did they get the sample from? In the 1970s, a renowned Bigfoot investigator, Peter Byrne, who was then the director of the Bigfoot Information Center and Exhibition, investigated a possible credible sighting of the mythical creature.
Forest roads, all those on the side. So that I think the reason is they see something, they can nip in quickly. Or they see a hazard, they can nip in quickly. All those on the side. And the same with the Bigfoot.
During his expedition, according to reports by the Washington Post, Byrne acquired a sample of several hairs and some skin that was believed to belong to Bigfoot. After this, Byrne wrote to the FBI several times in 1976, asking if they would perform a detailed analysis of the hairs, which Byrne noted that his group was unable to identify. Maybe they did not have the necessary equipment, but that's not all. Byrne also wanted to know if the FBI had analyzed suspected Bigfoot hair before, and if so, he asked them to tell him what their conclusion was. The letters he wrote to them make up most of the FBI file and are now available to the public via the FBI Records Vault. Yes, the publicly available file mostly deals with Byrne's quest to get the hairs analyzed by the government. The contents of the file also feature a lot of correspondence between Byrne, Assistant Director of the FBI's Scientific and Technical Services Division, J. Cochran Jr., and Howard Curtis of the Academy of Applied Sciences in Boston, with which the Bigfoot Information Center and Exhibition was affiliated. In the beginning, the correlation mainly consists of Byrne and Cochran going back and forth with each other regarding approval for the analysis, but eventually the request is finally accepted. Cochran addresses Byrne in a letter dated Dec 15, 1976. Cochrane wrote, "The FBI laboratory conducts examinations primarily of physical evidence for law enforcement agencies in connection with criminal investigations."
Bigfoot may be an urban myth to most people, but in the late 70s, the FBI was investigating whether or not Sasquatch really existed.
Occasionally, on a case-by-case basis, in the interest of research and scientific inquiry, we make exceptions to this general policy. With this understanding, we will examine the hairs and tissues mentioned in your letter. In the letter, Cochrane also instructed Byrne where to send his hair and tissue samples, along with a request for any available background information concerning the source of the specimen he might have had. Unfortunately, Byrne never received this letter, according to the Washington Post. Howard Curtis of the Academy of Applied Sciences, however, did receive the letter on Byrne's behalf, so he sent along the samples. The analysis was duly performed, with Cochrane writing back to Curtis on Feb. 24, 1977, with the results. According to Cochrane's response, the hairs that Curtis had delivered to the FBI laboratory on behalf of the Bigfoot Information Center and Exhibition had been examined under incident light microscopy for root structure, medullary structure, and cuticle thickness. However, the microscopic screening was not enough. The hairs were also compared directly with hairs of known origin under a strong comparison microscope, after which the FBI was, in fact, able to make a conclusion. What they found was not what they expected. It was finally made clear as a result of these examinations that the hairs belonged to a creature in the deer family. 4 decades later, after the screening of the specimen, the Bureau declassified its Bigfoot file. This does not mean that the FBI endorses the existence of Bigfoot. In the same way, the U.S. military's decades-long investigation of UFOs and UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, is not an endorsement of the existence of aliens. To back this statement, Benjamin Radford, a well-known American writer and skeptic of the paranormal, said, "All it means is the FBI did a favor to a Bigfoot researcher. There's nothing wrong with that, but it shouldn't be mistaken for de facto government endorsement of the reality of Bigfoot." Despite the fact that the government does not endorse the existence of Bigfoot, or at least they have not yet found hard evidence, those who believe in the mythical creature will choose to see it the way they wish. According to Radford, Bigfoot believers tend to love the idea that there's a smoking gun in the FBI files. He believes that they are convinced that Bigfoot must be real. Otherwise, the FBI wouldn't have taken the matter seriously and invested their resources to find the truth.
The Washington Post tells us that the legend of Bigfoot was so fascinating to a man named Peter Byrne that he actually became an expert on it. And after one such sighting, he sent a clump of hairs that he believed belonged to Bigfoot to the FBI, asking them to test it.
Radford did not stop there. He consistently supported his stance that Bigfoot does not exist by claiming that the FBI didn't send out a team of investigators to look for Bigfoot. Instead, they agreed only to run an analysis of 15 hairs. To him, this meant that they did not take the issue seriously enough, but rather agreed to help a researcher finish up his homework in order to shed some credible light to the masses and end the nonstop fascination about the creature. To add more layers of controversy to what is already an unusual case for the government to be involved in, the then 93-year-old Byrne didn't seem to recall receiving the FBI's response that the Bigfoot hair he had sent them was actually deer hair. Knowing that Byrne had been out of the country for several months, Cochrane sent the letter to the executive vice president of the Academy of Applied Science, which was associated with Byrne's Bigfoot organization. The executive wrote that he would give Byrne copies of the response letter from the FBI when he returned. Yet when the FBI released its Bigfoot file, which was exclusively about Byrne's inquiry, on June 5, 2019, Byrne reacted as though he were hearing that it was deer hair for the first time. "Obviously, I can't speak for Peter Byrne," Radford said, "but if you're going to make a big enough deal about this unknown specimen to give it to the FBI, then you're not going to want to publicize the fact that it turned out to be deer." As disappointing as the revelation is, the case is not yet closed. For all people know, the FBI could have Bigfoot documents but were not willing to show the public, and this is all just a clever strategy to throw the masses off in the search for Bigfoot. Is it possible that they hid the real findings in order to maintain peace? If people knew that the creature existed, they would also believe that other paranormal activity like aliens and UFOs was true, leading to national chaos. This can't be further from the truth, as numerous people claim to have encountered the strange creature and even recorded it on tape. Civilians' encounter with Bigfoot. In 2019, a Hickory resident and Bigfoot hunter, Doug Teague, filmed what he claimed to be one of the clearest videos of a North Carolina Bigfoot ever seen.
Looks like it's looking over top of that stump. Look at it. It's moving.
He was walking his dog in the woods just outside the city. While checking some trail cams, he heard a loud knocking in the distance. He got closer, spotted an unrecognizable creature on top of a ridge, and began recording it. He followed the huge creature's footprints and took casts of them. Doug claimed that as he got close to the creature, it began throwing stones at him, something a bear or another animal could not do. Later, the footprint casts were looked at by an anthropologist who thought that the footprints belonged to a creature about 15 feet tall, something other experts agreed to. This is the approximate height of Bigfoot, according to various sources and myths. But could what Doug saw be the real deal, or was it just another human being dressed in a gorilla costume? Another alleged Bigfoot encounter happened in 2020 in San Gabriel Wilderness, California. As a hiker pulled out his camera to record the stunning landscape, he spotted a creature among the trees below and zoomed in. The creature seemed to be around 10 to 15 feet, although it appeared not to move. This claim of seeing the creature was dismissed as the area was not a regular Bigfoot sighting. But those are not the only claims of evidence of the creature being found. A well-known explorer, Eric Shipton, famous for conquering many of the world's inaccessible peaks, told his own story of the Bigfoot, or rather, what he thought to be Bigfoot. In 1951, Shipton climbed Mount Everest, and while passing through the pool of the Moon Lounge Peak at an altitude of about 19,000 meters above sea level, he claimed to have come across Bigfoot. He encountered a footprint 13 inches long in the snow, unmistakably for a giant monkey-like creature. He took pictures comparing the size of the footprint to his pickaxe to demonstrate the gigantic size of the footprint. The trail of the footprints stretched for about a mile and then disappeared. Shipton was not lucky enough to have direct contact with the creature during his journey through the thick snow and rocks. Maybe this was his lucky day, as nobody knew how dangerous or violent the creature was when in close proximity to humans. As if that's not enough proof, in 2015, a mushroom hunter got more than he asked for when hunting for rare mushroom species from a forest in northern Illinois. He recorded a rare type of clip and uploaded it to his YouTube channel, Tomorrow's Garden. As he recorded the various mushroom species he encountered, he was interrupted by a loud howling in the woods.
I think it's time to go.
The howl seemed to be made by a creature that was in pain, and the howl was like nothing he had ever heard. Although the howl scared him, he assumed that the creature was in pain after eating some of the poisonous mushrooms, judging by some of the mushrooms he had initially encountered with fresh bite marks. Till now, Bigfoot has mostly been associated with the rural mountainous areas in America and Alaska. This makes sense since Native American tribes' folklore speaks of the creature in different lights. However, there are several lesser-known Bigfoot sightings in the United Kingdom. For example, in 2021, Lee Brickley, a Bigfoot enthusiast, claimed to have found tracks and claw marks that proved that an ape-like creature was living in the forests of Britain. He found the alleged evidence in Cannock Chase, Staffordshire. Yet this is not the first time this place has had reports of strange creature sightings. For centuries, this 26-square-mile forest has had countless instances of paranormal activity and supernatural phenomena. There have been reports of child spirits, UFOs, werewolves, and sightings of Yeti-like creatures dating back to the 1800s. To prove that his theory was not just a fuss to get people's attention, Lee took pictures of footprints that measured 41 centimeters from toe to heel, nearly twice the size of an average male footprint and far too large to belong to any native animal of the UK. A month after finding the footprints, Lee found other claw marks close to the same area with a mutilated deer covered in bite marks and its throat ripped out. The funny thing is, these sightings seem to have increased in number since 2019, making many believe that a humanoid creature lurks in these woods of England. All these reported cases and recordings by people from different parts of the world raise the question of whether Bigfoot is a single creature or whether there are other humanoid creatures like it all over the world. With contradicting information from the FBI and citizens, some researchers decided to independently conduct their own research using other scientific methods out of curiosity to try and get to the bottom of it. Through the eyes of a genetic researcher, an Oxford University geneticist well known for his research on human evolution conducted a comprehensive DNA analysis of hair samples that were believed to be from Bigfoot. Published in 2014, his study aimed to analyze dozens of hair samples from all around the world. Sykes decided to analyze the DNA of what was regarded as Yeti samples, thinking that there was a 5% chance that he would find something interesting, a new mammal species. Yes, he did want to find traces of Bigfoot, but the possibility of finding undiscovered animal species was more fascinating to him. And the universe did not disappoint. In 2012, Sykes and his colleague Michel Sartori of the Museum of Zoology in Lausanne, Switzerland, posted a call for hair and other samples thought to be from Yetis, Bigfoot, or any other weird species unknown to science all over the world. The researchers went ahead and compared these stretches of DNA to known species in the GenBank database, which catalogs thousands of species of animals. And in came the hairs. There were hairs from famous expeditions, including a trek by Sir Edmund Hillary, hairs from museums, Buddhist relics, and quite a lot of material from Bigfoot enthusiasts in the United States. Sykes narrowed down 95 samples to 37 that were most interesting based on the circumstances of their collection. Of those 37, the team was able to extract DNA from 30. When giving a report of the findings, Sykes said, "A lot of them turned out to be very ordinary animals in their natural habitats." As the team reported on July 1st in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B, supposed Yeti and Bigfoot samples turned out to come from bears, brown, black, and polar, horses, raccoons, one human, and some canines, which the test didn't narrow down if they were wolves or dogs. They also reported DNA of cows, sheep, a North American porcupine, a Malaysian tapir, and a serow, which is a known animal similar to a goat or antelope. All these findings did not fall under the scope of Bigfoot-related findings.
FBI has now released their findings, and at the time they tested the hairs, and spoiler alert, they belong to a deer.
But 2 hair samples from the Himalayas really left him shaken. These hairs, both brownish in color, perfectly matched a short stretch of DNA once extracted from the jawbone of a 40,000-year-old polar bear. Unfortunately, the hairs did not match modern polar bears. One sample of hair came from an animal that had been shot 40 years before the investigation in Ladakh, India, by a hunter who reported that it behaved differently from typical brown bears. The researchers' best guess was that the hairs were from either an unknown bear species or a hybrid of a brown bear and a polar bear. Such hybrids are known in the Arctic, but genetically resemble modern rather than ancient polar bears. If there was a Himalayan hybrid, it might have descended from a different, long-ago interbreeding between the species. However, since the match between the 2 hairs and the ancient polar bear resulted from a fragment just 104 DNA letters long, the result was only the beginning, and the team hoped to do further analysis despite having no external funding for their research. To Sykes, if there was a previously unknown bear species living in the Himalayas, it may be what people there had seen and reported as a Yeti. To back this, Coleman said that those findings would be consistent with those reports and that the idea of a white, abominable snowman came from TV shows like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. In the end, publishing data in a respected, peer-reviewed journal was a big step for cryptozoology, even if it meant finding out that Yetis don't exist. At least, that's what the data from the samples they had access to had to say. Moreover, Sykes pointed out that he hadn't actually disproven that the animals exist. He believed that there's always some chance, however small, that the right sample just hadn't been collected. To summarize his findings, he said that Bigfoot chasers can go back into the forest knowing that if they get a genuine sample, it can be identified, and to a standard that everyone will accept, native versus modern perspective. Following the 1958 Bigfoot alleged sightings, woods workers east and west of the Cascade Mountains began to report seeing tall, ape-like creatures. On top of that, they began discovering their immense tracks along logging roads, enhancing public recognition of the Bigfoot name back then. Witnesses observed these so-called humanoids crossing roads at night, striding furtively through forest and mountain terrain, or digging for and eating ground squirrels in rock piles. Bigfoot quickly entered into the occupational culture of loggers, manifested as serious stories, jokes, chainsaw sculptures, and fabricated prints as playful pranks. By the 1970s, former Yeti hunter Peter Byrne had established the Bigfoot Information Center at the Dalles, gaining national media attention for his documentation of eyewitness testimony and footprints cited as evidence for a new species of primate.
And basically what we're doing, in a nutshell, is gathering all of the information and putting it into a computer against a prepared database and looking for patterns. And then when we find these patterns, we will apply technical equipment in various forms.
Footprints in dirt or snow continued to be found and reported to various organized groups who have followed Byrne's efforts. But that's not all that has been happening. Native Americans in Oregon have increasingly situated Bigfoot within traditional belief systems as beings with deeply rooted cultural significance. Tribes in coastal Oregon related Bigfoot to ancient tales of wild men who lurked near villages and left immense tracks, as described in Clara Pearson's tales from the Nehalem Tillamook. Members of plateau tribes, such as those at the Warm Springs Reservation, identify Bigfoot as a stick Indian. To them, Bigfoot is a diverse category of potentially hostile beings who stole salmon or confused people by whistling, causing them to become lost. Sightings and stories continue on reservations today, representing a spiritual connection to the pre-contact past and the resilience of indigenous cultural heritage. More recently, Bigfoot in popular culture has devolved into a series of sports mascots, children's entertainment, and cryptozoological reality shows. It has also been playfully promoted in state legislation and celebrations. Politicians in both Oregon and Washington have proposed bills to protect the creatures from hunters, and hairy humanoids have served as official state mascots, first as Harrison Bigfoot for Washington's centennial in 1989, and then Sesky the Sasquatch for Oregon's sesquicentennial in 2009. A number of prominent writers have reflected thoughtfully on the tradition in literature that explores changing attitudes toward the natural world. Through fiction and science writing, they have depicted Bigfoot as a kind of charismatic being that emerged in the modern environmental imaginary as an icon of enchantment and endangerment. To them, the mythical creature exists to re-mythologize connections between humans and the wild in the region's compromised but not unredeemable landscapes. While the idea of believing in the existence of mythical creatures gives a sense of mystery and meaning to human life, it is also good to be logical about the case of Bigfoot. This begins with people asking themselves why it has been so hard for scientists to get the remains of Bigfoot if they have managed to get fossils of dinosaurs over 2 million years old. Logically speaking, it's either the legendary Bigfoot does not exist, and if it does, it is not ready for the spotlight just yet, hence the evasive nature of the creature.